about today. Oh, So thanks for coming by and checking out our program today. I'm going to put up my PowerPoint for you. It looks like I scooted it. Scoot back where I was supposed to be. Being strategic with professionals. Okay. So by the end of our time today, you should be able to understand the ways farmers can benefit from a team of professionals. Like which ones are right for your situation? How can you be efficient and effective in working with these folks? We're going to have you had 45 minutes to talk, 15 minutes throughout for your questions. And well, I got to say, I can't promise to answer every one of your questions, but we're going to do our best. And I'm confident you'll walk away from our program today with a stronger understanding of how you can build resilience by doing more with others. All right. So, Farm Commons, that's my employer. Let me tell you a little bit more about us in case you are not familiar. Our mission is to empower agricultural communities to address their own legal vulnerabilities within an ecosystem of support. We're a 501(c)(3) nonprofit, and we achieve that mission by creating educational resources. This webinar is one such example, but we also have print guides, we do workshops, we have a podcast, and we also answer questions from folks on a daily basis. Leadership development. We really believe that farmers themselves are the best source of solutions to the problems that they experience. And we create ways for farmers to step into leadership around farm law. Membership is what makes it possible for us to host our programming nationwide. I'll tell you more about that at the end. Before we go on, I want to mention one thing we don't do. We are not attorneys for hire, and we don't provide individual legal services. So even if you wanted an attorney, you can't call us up to hire us. We are exclusively devoted to educational outreach and leadership development. And that also means that we don't earn revenue by charging for legal services. That's important to us in part because we want to earn your trust. When I'm telling you about when and how to use an attorney, I want you to be able to trust that information, knowing that I'm not serving myself in doing that. I'm not hoping that you'll turn around and hire me, because you can't. So we believe in the power of education, and we also build trust by not offering those services ourselves. I'll tell you a little bit more about myself before we get too much farther. I'm the executive director. I also founded Farm Commons 10 years ago, and I'm an attorney. I'm licensed to practice in Wisconsin. That being said, I live in Duluth, Minnesota, which is right next to Wisconsin. This is where I grew up. I got a picture there of my ancestors back in the day farming potatoes and cabbage. I actually have a receipt from the hospital where my own children were born for the birth of my uncle, paid for with bushels of potatoes and cabbage. So, he's kind of old. And you can also bet they did not accept potatoes and cabbage when my children were born. So I do this because I think you deserve this information to develop your resilience consistent with your values. All right. So if you have that chat box handy, I want you to get used to talking with me if you are so inclined today. I am very curious. Right now, do you work with any of these professionals? Do you work with an insurance agent or a broker, an accountant, bookkeeper, attorney, or tax preparer? If you do, feel free to drop in the chat box which of these professionals you work with. I would love to hear that from you, in part because you have experience, you have expertise, you've been making these decisions about professionals that you want to work with, and your input and wisdom is also welcome today. When we have a pause for questions, feel free to jump in with your thoughts and experience on working with these types of folks. All right. Well, let's see. And thank you, Taylor, for getting right into the chat box right away. Taylor has an insurance agent and a tax preparer. Amazing. Okay, and that's also right in line with what I'm going to lead with. I'm going to lead with insurance agents or brokers. I'll be straight up with you. It is my opinion that every farmer and rancher needs an insurance agent on their team. I feel quite strongly that this is one of those professionals that isn't optional for a resilient farmer ranch business. It's so vital. And I'm going to talk to you about why. I'm going to cover this from two different angles. First, the property angle, and then second, liability. Okay, so first, let's talk about property insurance. Most people are familiar, but quick run through just in case. Property insurance helps you recover if your property, your buildings and equipment is lost due to natural causes so that you can replace or rebuild those. The value, that's pretty clear. Most people are on board with that premise. But again, we'll talk about this as a reminder. Many of us do not have a choice about whether or not to buy property insurance. Most of us have a mortgage or a lender who gave us money to buy the property on which we are located. And in that case, the mortgager or lender generally requires that property insurance be carried. They're doing that because they need to make sure that that asset is protected. They don't want to lose their security if the barn and house burn down either. But also climate change is an increasing motivation for people to secure adequate property insurance. When we are looking at wildfires, increased tornadoes and things like that, this is motivating people to take a look at things. If those two aren't enough, well, the house and property is a significant asset for many farm families, and they are motivated to protect that so that they can secure that asset and even pass it along. Now, some of you on the line might rent, and so you don't have that ownership investment at risk. But even if you rent, you do have equipment and your own security at risk. If a fire or tornado takes out all of your inventory, all of your tractors or something like that, how do you get back on your feet? Commercial property and renters insurance is available to those that don't own land to help protect their investment in equipment and inventory. All right, so most people, because of that lender situation and the prevalence of property insurance, are pretty on board here. And most people don't have too much trouble finding this. You don't even really need an insurance agent. You can even buy these things online. So we're going to move on to liability insurance. This is an area where more people have doubts about the utility of liability insurance, and we have less of that persuasion, less of that influence to buy it. So let's talk liability insurance. And I am going to highlight the value of this insurance through 3 myths. Myth number 1, my farm or ranch is safe, so liability insurance just isn't that important to me. Well, the truth is that even the safest of farms get sued. That's the lawsuit is part of how we figure out who was safe and unsafe. As is common knowledge in American society, when someone gets injured, generally everybody gets sued, even the people who didn't do it, even the people who are very safe. You still get sued so that you go into court to prove you were safe. That's how we establish it. Okay, myth number 2. If I sell to people I trust, who are good folks, I don't need to worry that they'll sue me. That's another, common misconception about American society is, there's these bad litigious people out there who will sue the pants off you just because they can. It's not quite that way. It's not that people are unkind when they sue. It's that their health insurance company is doing the suing. When we buy private health insurance, or when we receive it through our workplace, we are generally signing over the right to sue in our own name for injuries that our health insurance company treated. So they go ahead and sue the farm or ranch, not the person whose name is actually on the lawsuit. So, and if a person doesn't want to comply with that, then they get to pay for their own their own treatment. The insurance company can deny payment for the treatment received. So really important, even if you work with people you trust. The third myth is no one comes to my farm, so my risk exposure is 0. I don't have to worry about this. Okay, it might be true. Maybe nobody does come to your farm, and so this is less of a concern for you. But I have 2 things for you in that instance. Normally, liability insurance comes with property insurance, so you might be buying this anyways. And you should make sure that what you're paying for is something that is useful to you. And also, if you know what you have, if you know you already have some liability insurance, it opens up the door for you to consider recreational access or inviting people to your farm if that is something positive for you in the future. So to recap, every farm needs liability insurance, even if they are safe, work with good people, and don't have folks over. So still, we've got to think about working with our insurance agent to get something that works for us. And that's the next thing I've got for you. Okay, so you need insurance. It's going to help you out. What about the agent or broker? It is important to find the right one so that you can make sure you're getting the full value of this important risk management tool. The best thing I can tell you is to find an agent who's familiar with farm businesses, especially as your farm or ranch grows, diversifies, change marketing strategies. You're going to need someone who can evolve with you. The unfortunate situation in farm insurance right now is that there isn't a standard policy for a farm that, say, sells its own meat, but also distributes some of the neighbor's meat, plus has a coffee share and maybe some people out for pizza 5 times in the summer. It's not standard. So that farm definitely needs insurance, but is going to be tricky to get insurance coverage for each of those aspects, like meat sales, pizza night, and distributing other farms' products. The agent's job is to match your operation to the standard policies and create a sort of a jigsaw puzzle of coverage using standard ones plus endorsements to cover each aspect of your operation. It can be challenging. And so having someone who's very aware of different farm business models is really helpful. The best way to find that person is, of course, to ask around. Ask other farmers and ranchers, talk with extension educators, talk with your advocacy and nonprofit organizations, and go to those farm conferences and scroll the exhibit booth. Don't just pick up their pens and their Post-it notes. Good time to talk with them and see what they know. Sometimes that still gets you nowhere, especially when there's not a lot of farm businesses around you. And in that case, pursue another small business insurance, another small business, and ask them who they use. All right. So those are some tips on insurance, finding an insurance agent. And I want to make sure I identify the difference between an agent and a broker. An agent generally represents one company and their products. A broker tends to represent more than one company and can source from a variety of different companies. Neither is necessarily better. It's more about their familiarity with farming and their ability to put together that jigsaw puzzle. Okay, so that's the importance of finding the right agent, but that's just half the equation. You are the other half. You can help your agent be successful when you give them a lot of details. So remember that they need to do some matching of policies to your situation. They can only do that if they know your situation. Even if they know farms, they might not know your farm. How do you produce your product? Where do you sell it? What risks concern you? What are the bad things that keep you up at night? When we're talking property, which of your equipment is really vital to your income earning? Which of your buildings are very important to your revenue generation? Which of your markets are essential? If something agritourism like pizza night generates 75% of your income for the year, then that's definitely something you need to emphasize for your insurance agent and let them know how essential that revenue stream is to your overall security. Now, if by contrast you have 2 farm tours a year and you don't really like them, another valuable information for your insurance agent. You can tell them, look, I don't really love doing farm tours, and I'll let that go if it'll save me money. The more information that your insurance agent has, the better able they will be to put together a jigsaw puzzle that gives you full coverage and is cost effective. Okay. The honest thing, though, is that buying insurance is not really a fun process. Sometimes it's not comfortable. Ultimately, this is a person who wants your money. They are selling you something. And in uncomfortable situations like that, sometimes we can be tempted to get it over with as soon as possible. Who wants another visitor to the house a lot of times? But keep in mind that a visit to your farm can be a good thing. If you're in a situation where you're being offered a policy after exchanging a 2-sentence email with an agent, even if the price is right, you got to be thinking, how much do they really get me? Are they truly offering you the best match? They might not be. And the bad thing is you're not going to discover that until after something bad happens. I used to go into my programs with farmers and say, look, you got to read the policy. And the policy is not the endorsements page. The policy is 40 incredibly boring pages, that read like a legal document. I used to tell folks to read that. I don't anymore because it is not fun. And you have to be an attorney to really understand these things. That's not right. It's not fair, but it is the reality. You also don't even get the policy until after you buy. It's like, you can't see the menu until you put down the money. It's very frustrating, but it is what it is. And what it means is you are deeply dependent on your relationship with the insurance agent. When they visit your house, talk with you and see what you're doing, you're going to be in a better position to develop that authentic relationship. So the best you can do is really focus on finding someone that you trust and working with them consistently as your business grows and changes. Okay, how much does it cost? Ugh. So, very important question. Let's start with property. Property insurance varies hugely. It depends, of course, on how valuable the property itself is. What does that barn look like? How new is that tractor? And if it's going to change depending on whether you rent or own, and also dependent on the risk factors in your area. The higher a likelihood you have for events like, tornadoes, hurricanes, theft, all those other things that are covered, that's going to affect the total premium. It can also be hard for individuals to identify what they exactly are paying for property insurance. Those of us with mortgages often pay for this via escrow, and it gets bundled into our monthly mortgage payment. So we can't even say, oh yeah, $835, I wrote the check yesterday. Some folks are in that position, but many more of us are kind of in the dark about what we're paying in the first place. So when you ask the farmer down the road and she doesn't know, that could be why. Liability insurance is more standard. So if we're talking about a commercial liability coverage that gets added onto a current farm property policy for property that we own, we're normally talking between $200 to $600. And that additional coverage covers you for the slip and falls, the people who come to your farm tour and break a leg, the people who are at your farmer's market stand and get smacked in the face with a flying umbrella, that sort of thing. So for a lot of folks, $200 to $600, not bad for the security that provides. Now, sometimes though, you might have this, well, Rachel told me $200 to $600, and you get a quote back and it's like $2,000. Here's your entry to a conversation. Ask why. Is there something you're doing that's really risky? One of the things that we see in particular is on-farm poultry slaughter, the presence of horses, a lot of farm events. Those sorts of things can really increase your liability coverage. It also might be a mistake. Your agent may have a misimpression about the way you're using a certain market channel or the number of people that are coming to the farm on a regular basis. So ask why. It does develop a trusting relationship with that agent as well when they can, go back to the desk, figure out why. I also talked with a farmer once, and she had an amazing strategy for dealing with disparate quotes that she would get. She would take one quote from insurance agent A, and she would bring that to insurance agent B and say, hey, why is that gal's policy so much more expensive or so much cheaper than the one you are trying to sell me? That's an amazing question because they are the agent. They are the ones who are supposed to best understand the policies that they are selling. So that can also reveal who really knows what they're talking about here. All right. That's a lot of good stuff on insurance. I would love to hear if there are any questions or if you have any insight from your workings with insurance folks. I don't see any questions coming in just yet. Feel free to get into that chat box if something comes to mind. All right. Seeing none, I will keep moving. And don't worry, this is not your last chance. We have a question break at the end as well. Okay. So that's going to wrap us up for insurance. And now we are going to move into our financial professionals and our attorneys. Let's start with financial professionals. Okay. So many farmers work with financial professionals on a regular basis. These folks help us maintain our financial records in a way that helps us make business decisions. They help us finance the operation, file taxes, fulfill other obligations. So valuable folks here. Not every farmer uses these professionals, but I think most folks pay at least one of these providers. So what we're going to go today is we're going to work through each of bookkeepers, accountants, payroll processors, and tax preparers one by one to talk about what service do they provide, where is their real value, how do we find them, what do they cost. I'm going to start with bookkeepers. Okay, so what do bookkeepers do? Well, they enter transactions. They log your sales, log your purchases. Sometimes they create your invoices, and they do all of that in a consistent and timely manner. They also do that according to specific standards, like matching budget categories or enterprise areas that you might have. Some bookkeepers will also help you pay your bills on time. Some will also help alert you to any problems, like your cash in the bank is getting low. You have unpaid invoices that are starting to pile up. Sometimes you're getting that's going above and beyond what a bookkeeper might do. But if you find someone who can help you with those, they often will throw that in too. So I think oftentimes what farmers experience as the real value of bookkeeping is that when the books aren't kept, it can be very difficult to do anything else around the farm. Very hard to do your taxes when your books are in disarray. When your transactions aren't entered, it's hard to run a financial statement. If you can't run a financial statement, you might not be sure of what you have. It's gonna be harder to get financing. And it just makes it harder to make decisions. If you're wondering if a certain area of your business is profitable, you want to have really good records and reports that you can run that show you its profitability, which boils down to having good bookkeeping. Who can benefit from hiring a bookkeeper? Well, retaining help in this area is especially good for folks who get behind in entering their transactions, and they lead to this pile up or this shoebox, the proverbial shoebox that's overflowing. People who are scrambling when it's time to file taxes and feel really burdened and overwhelmed by that. Even for folks that manage to stay on top of their transactions, hiring a bookkeeper can be helpful for individuals who are not detail-oriented enough to follow specific standards consistently. If you find that your accountant or your tax preparer is spending a lot of time cleaning up your books, reorganizing transactions, allocating things effectively so that the accountant can do their job, you might benefit from a bookkeeper. To find a good bookkeeper, most of these are local. Now, that's historically been the case where there's a part-timer in town who will take you on as a client. But increasingly, we are seeing more online bookkeepers. Online bookkeepers depend on you taking pictures of your receipts and uploading those things. So it's not quite the same as a person who, will come to your office and dig through that shoebox and help you stay up to date. Finding a good one is the same as, well, all the professionals that I'm recommending today. Look for referrals from your peers. You can also find a good bookkeeper by talking with the other service providers that you work with, like an accountant. Asking an accountant is great because they kind of have the inside view into which bookkeepers are really doing a great job, or tax prep folks as well. What do bookkeepers cost? They charge sometimes an hourly rate and sometimes a flat rate service, depending on the specifics. A lot of farmers pay, 300 a month for, the smallest businesses, going up to, 400 or 500 a month for folks that are turning through a lot of transactions. When you think about cost, keep in mind that bookkeepers are generally a lot less expensive than accountants and tax preparers. So you're paying a lower price for an hour's worth of work with a bookkeeper, but that can be very efficient because what they can save you the more expensive professional's time. So if 2 hours with a bookkeeper saves you 30 minutes with, an accountant, that math might work out for you because the accountant might be 4 times more. If you find yourself making mistakes or not keeping up and you're paying the good money to the accountant or the tax preparer to fix it for you, think about looking into a bookkeeper. The other thing I want to mention is mental effort and energy. Oh, bookkeeping can be distracting and annoying. Would your life be better if you weren't doing it? Something to keep in mind. Okay, on to payroll processors. This used to be a person, but often nowadays, payroll processors are turning into software that you access online. Their core function is to turn timesheets into money into your employees' accounts and money to the government for the taxes. So your payroll processor, really all they do is calculate taxes, remit it to the authorities, and make deposits or print checks for employees. If you don't have employees, you definitely don't need a payroll processor. Maybe you pay yourself, but you can probably figure that one out. The other nice thing is that they tend to handle any issues that might result from that. Like if they make a mistake, remitting to the government, they could take care of that. Okay, the value with a payroll processor is that this stuff is frustrating. It's very deadline driven, very forms driven. And, you got to put things in box, HG and 11.2. And if you don't do it right, there's fines. It's especially valuable for anyone who hires in multiple states, because then you have to learn more than one state's rules and set up withholding accounts and remittance in various states. Farmers and ranchers benefit the most from this when they are struggling with recurring frequent deadlines of payroll. And also folks who don't like doing math, navigating percentages, and depositing and completing government forms. And some folks, they might have no problems with numbers, but they just don't want those fines and they want help if something goes wrong. All those are good reasons to consider a payroll processor. These folks can be affordable. I'm just going to use Farm Commons as the most relevant example. We pay 5 people. We have 5 employees per month, and we run payroll twice a month, and we pay $100. For my money, that is well spent, because I do not want to figure out. And honestly, those 5 people are in 4 different states, so we're dealing with a lot of different contingencies. For me, it's good money. For you, though, you do have to find a payroll processor that works with farm businesses, because payroll processing for farms is unlike any other industry. And my payroll processor is Gusto, and they just decided that they will not handle farm businesses anymore. So that's a bummer and something you got to pay attention to. We're going to move on to our accountants and tax preparers now. I combined accountants and tax preparers into one because I wanted to be able to contrast for you what these different professionals do and their unique value to you. So accountants, the main job of an accountant is to produce financial statements for you that adhere to best practices. And those financial statements are primarily provided to you to help you make decisions. Yes, sometimes we are also preparing our financial statements to file our taxes, but that gets into a different goal. So to back up a little bit, accountants are looking at issues like depreciation, amortization, and other logistical issues of money. They can also advise us on cash flow, liquidity, profitability. If you want to make an important decision about your farm or ranch, and you want to do it with a strong grounding in your financial position, an accountant is really, really valuable. Now, again, that is not the same as tax prep. Many accountants do tax prep or get called upon to facilitate tax prep, but that's a different goal. Tax prep is about turning financial statements into IRS forms. And it's usually about trying to do that in a way that minimizes tax obligations. Although not always, because sometimes we want to pay more taxes for various reasons. So we complete our IRS tax forms with a certain goal in mind. And that goal is generally not things like managing cash flow, understanding liquidity and profitability, and making important decisions. Taxes are just, how much money do I really have to pay the government? So tax prep, they win. They're a success when they manage those obligations to minimize your payments. But you might need more. You might need a greater depth of wisdom into your actual stability and opportunity. And a tax preparer isn't necessarily going to do that for you or do it very well. So the core value from an accountant is getting the information you need to make good business decisions. They also help you stay compliant with lenders because you can end up in a situation of fraud and other bad things if you submit statements to your lenders that don't follow best practices. So there's that side of it too. So accountants get you that information you need on a regular basis to help you make choices about how to market your product or whether to grow your business. Tax preparers, the value there is really about compliance with tax laws, which can change every year, and minimizing and strategizing your tax obligations efficiently over time. So who benefits from accountants and tax preparers? Folks that depend on financial performance to make decisions really need accountants. Those that are looking at expansion, transition, or new ventures. Folks who also feel uncertain about whether their statements right now are accurate, they also benefit. And folks who maybe do their own bookkeeping. They do their own bookkeeping if they think they're doing good enough, but they want a higher level view on things. An accountant can be really good for that. Tax prep is valuable to folks that are looking at taxable income and wondering if there are other opportunities to manage that available to them. And of course, for anyone who has a lot of anxiety about completing tax returns or a fear of the government asking follow-up questions, working with a tax prep person is a great way to put a little bit of a line of defense in between you and the IRS. These are expensive. I've talking about bookkeepers as a more efficient choice because we're talking professional fees. We're talking into the thousands of dollars for these services. There is tax prep software out there, but when you need the farm version, you're paying for business license fees, not those personal license fees that you might be accustomed to if you haven't run your own business. So even that can run you into the thousands of dollars. So again, it's a lot of money up front, but a lot of folks find this to be well worth the time and energy. All right, I've got accountants, or I'm sorry, we just talked about accountants. I've got attorneys left to go, and then we'll see if you got any more questions. Okay, and if you hear any noise, my kids just got home from school. Grandma's taking care of them though. Gotta love that. All right, attorneys. You know what attorneys do. Paperwork and contracts and lawsuits. But let's put it in some other words. Really, the service that attorneys provide is helping you put your decisions into an enforceable and written form. Now, I say that very strategically because I truly believe that you are the best person to make your decisions, and an attorney is not. But once you've made that decision, an attorney is pretty effective for making it enforceable, putting it in writing. And when I say your decisions, I'm talking about leases, sales contracts, operating agreements, bylaws, farm transitions, those kind of decisions. They can also help you understand your obligations, like zoning codes, employment laws, and those sorts of things. And there's a knock at the door. One moment. All right. So when it comes to understanding obligations, we've got zoning codes, we've got employment laws, we've got other things, other influences coming to bear on us, and we've got to know what to do. An attorney is really good for that. Okay. And then lastly, attorneys are really good at helping you navigate government enforcement actions, or even the angry neighbor, the trespassing issue. When we have a problem, an attorney is a great choice. Now, it might be that the value of this is obvious, but again, I want to reframe it a little bit. Working with an attorney to memorialize your decisions and make sure that they're enforceable, the value there is the confidence that you can have that your expectations for others will be met. And if those expectations are not met, you have a path of recourse. I say that because this is especially important when you have money or property on the line. I don't believe that we need an attorney to memorialize every agreement that we have into an enforceable written form, because we're not going to enforce a lot of agreements and we're going to remember what we said. But when we have a lot of money and we have valuable property on the line, we might need to think about enforcement. And we might need to think about our memory over the course of 10 or 30 years. So it becomes even more important. I also think the core value of an attorney is in avoiding conflict, especially when you're doing something new in an area, like weddings in a barn or something like that. And it's different. And there might be some disagreement in the community. It can be really helpful to talk with an attorney about, well, what are my obligations? How can I set myself up for success and make sure I'm clearing a good path? And lastly, I didn't even write this one down. If there's a lawsuit, if you're being sued, well, you kind of got to resolve it. So clear value there. More importantly, though, how do we be effective when we are working with an attorney? The number one thing I can tell you is to stay in the driver's seat. Know your goals and what you want to do to achieve those goals. If you don't know your goals or what you want to do, you can ask for insight, but remember, you are paying dearly for that attorney's time. We're going to get to cost. And you might be more efficient asking for that help from someone else, like an extension educator or a nonprofit advocate, somebody who is both more affordable and more in tune with your values and with agricultural needs and opportunities in your area. Attorneys aren't really good at that, even the ones that have worked with farm businesses for a while. I want to mention online service providers. These are, they're kind of bots under the hood, but there's also people there, and they provide contract drafting, filing services like LLCs and things like that. What a lot of these service providers do is complete forms. They ask you a few basic questions, you provide some answers, and then they plug those things into a standard form or document. It's not bad. That's fine. And it often does achieve the goal, but it doesn't meet the real value of an attorney. In order to do that efficiently, usually what these online providers are doing is generalizing across many situations or many businesses. It's not individualized to you and what you want. And sometimes that's okay, like establishing an LLC. Establishing an LLC really is filling in the blanks. But if all you need is the blanks filled in, do you need to pay someone to do that for you? If it's that easy. So there's nothing wrong with an online service provider like LegalZoom or Rocket Lawyer. It's just, are you really getting value from that? Value that matters for you. Finding an attorney can be very challenging. I have the usual recommendations of asking around and looking at conferences, but the truth is not a lot of farmers use attorneys. The research that I've seen shows less than 20%. And when there's that little demand, there's not going to be a lot of supply. Going to be few attorneys who specialize in this. So you might have to go across the state to find someone who really works closely with farm businesses and has an understanding. So when you're asking for referrals, don't limit yourself to just your neighbors. Go statewide and know that, especially post-pandemic, most attorneys work remotely for anyone in the state that they are licensed in. Cost expectations, at least $200 an hour. You might find slightly less for a brand new attorney just out of law school, and you're going to find a lot more if you look in a big city. It's not unheard of for legal fees for the most sophisticated of work to get into $1,000 an hour. You don't need that, but just know that the sky is kind of the limit in terms of what folks can charge here. So ask, and again, make sure that you're getting value for that. There's nothing wrong with $200 an hour if you walk out with a document that is enforceable and clear and that really serves your needs. All right, I'm going to get right to my questions. I just have a few more things to tell you. If you are listening to this presentation and you're saying, gosh, there's more I would like to know about farm law, and I'm wondering about business structures, and I'm wondering about my compliance with various laws, consider taking Discovering Resilience. It is a workshop we offer. We give you the 10 legal best practices of a resilient farmer ranch business, and you walk out with a customized action plan for your operation. You can take our class on your own time or with a cohort of peers. And we are registering folks for our winter session now, starting in January, if you want to do it with a cohort. You can also take a look at 100+ guides, models, checklists, and a wide range of farm business law issues, all kinds of things that we talked about here, like insurance, liability, having people on your farm for agritourism. You can take our advanced farm law courses. Right now we have one on advanced farm employment law, and you can always ask us questions on our question and answer platform. Our resources are available to members, and you can take 30% off a membership fee, which gets it about $70 with Quivera's discount code through February. So if you want to follow up or learn more on any of these subjects, that's a great way to go forward. But otherwise, hopefully we've answered enough questions for now on who are these professionals, what value do they provide, and what should you expect to pay? And I would love to answer any questions you have.
Rachel, I had a question. I've experienced in the past certain insurance companies just won't insure certain activities on your farm. How does that work? Can they create a policy that just excludes those activities? Or I just don't, like chicken slaughter was one for us. We just, like, no one in the nation seemed like, just kept striking out. Yeah. So how would you handle that?
Right. Well, this won't make you feel better, but it might help the situation come into more focus. Insurance companies are private businesses. They sell a service. And just like any company that sells a service, they decide what the service is that they provide. And they provide that service when they can charge enough to make a profit on it. And when they decline to provide certain services, what they're saying is, we don't feel we can make a profit off this. So that means the risk in conducting that activity is either very high or unknown. An insurance company has to guard against too many claims. If they insure activities that are too risky, they won't make a profit because they're paying out on all those policies and not taking enough in, or those policies have to be so expensive that nobody will buy them. So when we're looking at things like chicken slaughter, which is so common nationwide that insurers will not cover it, they are saying either it's too hazardous, it's too risky, or we just don't have a good grip on the actual risks involved. And either way, they're not going to do it. And all we can do is keep asking and keep looking around. And if the situation gets bad enough, folks can do things like try to band together and appeal to like a mutual insurance company. Mutual insurance companies are like co-ops. They are owned by the people who buy the policies. So there may be more opportunity there to say, well, look, I've got 50 of my best chicken slaughtering pals here, and we need an insurance provider, and we would all, buy your policy if you could adapt it for us. So taking some coordinated action can help. And the other strategy is to try to figure out, what do they think is so dangerous about this? Is there a disconnect between the perceived risk and the actual risk? And can we communicate more differently? But just like the cafe owner that says lemon meringue pie isn't selling, I'm not going to make it anymore. They can just say, no, I don't want to,
Yeah, which is what happened. I think it was 2 years ago. We'd been covered all the way up until that point, and the very last policy provider just
Right.
called it quits. Yeah.
Yeah. And when your liability and your property insurance are connected, I have also seen farmers in the terrible situation of having their policy not renewed, then not having property insurance, then getting in trouble with the mortgager for not having property insurance, and being forced to stop that activity, being forced to stop on-farm chicken slaughter, and then losing the market and losing all the sales from that activity, and then not being able to pay the mortgage because now they lost the market. So it's a bad situation.
Yeah, could the farm essentially, yeah, I guess those things are really connected. Yeah, I had a hard time being like, well, could you just cover everything but,
Exactly.
and that was really a weird conversation. I don't know that I ever got an answer to that.
Yeah. They'll usually exclude an item of property, like we're not going to cover that barn
Mhm.
in case it burns down, but they will. I never see them exclude activities. We'll cover everything that happens on this farm except the weddings or except the slaughter, because
Oh,
it can be very challenging to distinguish whether something happened because of this or that. Usually our relationship to those activities, varies over space and time.
yeah, thanks.
Any other thoughts or stories or insights? I can say at Farm Commons, we use a bookkeeper, an accountant, and not even an insurance agent, actually, because for more standard operations like nonprofits, it's pretty easy to go online and buy. But I've found great value in a bookkeeper and accountant to help me keep things straight. I actually have had such good success with my bookkeeper and accountant that I can prepare my taxes on my own, because I can generate a report that is clean and precise, and then it's not a big lift to fill out the IRS forms from there, once I know that everything is clean in the report. So for me, it's saved money that way, because I don't know about farms, but nonprofits will pay about $2,000 to get a tax return done. So, that's several months of working with an accountant. So it works out for me. Oh, and we use a payroll provider because honestly, I didn't at first. And then I paid fines. And then the IRS got mad at me. And then I said, no, I'm not going to do this. I cannot handle this. I should be able to do it, but I'm not. So we pay a payroll provider too.
Yeah, I'll say as a beginning farmer just getting started, we found an accountant who I brought in eggs and pork and built a relationship with her, and she helped teach me how to use QuickBooks, and then I could
Nice.
handle the QuickBooks, and then I do pay her like $300 to do taxes, but I feel like it's worth it for, first of all, for the peace of mind to do someone else to do my taxes, but then also I feel like we have this relationship where she can answer my QuickBooks questions all year. So
Nice.
that's, yeah, it's one way to do it.
Yep.
This is a little off topic, but I once brought bread to my mechanic when I was working in a bakery, and he was like the best mechanic for 10 years over one loaf of bread. So
Right.
little food exchange goes a long way.
I absolutely agree. It's a good strategy.